Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 16, we think, of I Was Thinking with Robbie McElhaney. As always, make sure you follow us on all our social medias, catch us wherever you listen to your podcasts, and make sure you're tuning in on YouTube. Different episode, I think something, we talked last week, I talked last week about wanting to get back to what I think we both, Kait is off camera, producer extraordinaire is back.
Hello.
I think the content we're getting into now is what we had originally wanted to do. Kait, would you agree?
Yeah.
Just some coaching insight more, and that's what we'll call this episode 1 of Questions with Kait. We'll call it. I think that's a pretty cool name. Would you concur with?
Yeah, like what if this is all the questions I can come up with?
Well, I think so. Would you like to kind of give just a general synopsis of what we're topic wise? I don't want to know the questions. I don't know these questions, but
basically just being a football coach are mainly my questions, and one girl question because football, girls don't know football.
I beg to differ, but we'll go with that. So, would you like to lead us off with question number 1? Again, I don't know these questions. These answers are unscripted.
And I don't have them in order, so they're going to be all over the place. So
that's fine.
What does the recruiting process look like as a coach? And then go into detail what the opposite side of what it looks like as a player.
Well, I can tell you, I don't know necessarily what it looks like as a player.
But you can go into detail right. What a player does at that point.
Yeah, no, I mean we kind of briefly touched on it last week. So there's a couple different ways and avenues that the recruiting process can go. And a lot of it, I don't want to say it's necessarily determined on the level that the recruiting coach is coaching at, whether it's, one FBS, FCS, 2, 3 NAIA, different levels like that. A lot of it, the nice thing at the higher level you are, the more in-house support you have. So you have a recruiting department. I mean, just about every team has a recruiting coordinator, but it's different at the higher levels because their recruiting coordinator is more of a personnel guy versus when I was a recruiting coordinator, I was also a defensive line coach at St. Vincent. I was manager of football operations. So I'm doing a bunch of things versus at the higher level, you have somebody who doesn't coach a position, doesn't necessarily always work in operations. I think, they're the offset and the subset of operations. So, your recruiting coordinator and your operations, manager, director, however you want to. And now in today's world of college football, you have general managers and different things like that that kind of work hand in hand, in my opinion. I have never been on that level, so I don't know. But I think the easiest way to get into the recruiting process is just with identification and IDing prospects and how that happens. So I think, we'll start high school. We'll talk. Last week we talked about, prospect camps and showcases and different things like that. So, your name gets put onto a prospect list, and a lot of times, whether it's you get ID'd by the coach running a drill, scouting, different things like that at those camps. Twitter is huge. You have area coaches. So, when I was at Valdosta in 2022, I had all of Alabama, parts of South Carolina. I think South Carolina. Yeah, South Carolina. A little bit of Florida, a little bit of Georgia, and then I was in the Memphis area. Now, when I say that pending your level, a lot of people say, oh, so you're the area coach, you're there. Not necessarily. With us, I did go into Alabama. I traveled in Georgia. I did a couple different things there, but we weren't traveling to Memphis. We weren't traveling to South Carolina. Just budget-wise, it wasn't feasible. But the nice thing about being at a place like Valdosta State is the area. Well, there's tuition benefits and different things that certain schools offer. So like us, if you were a border state, you got in-state tuition, which helped with Alabama, South Carolina. They kept counted both Carolinas. So while North Carolina isn't a border state, they counted as well. So, and that's a long-winded way of getting to this answer. But we had benefits, on top of just being Valdosta State. So, I could get away with, and we could get away with emailing coaches in South Carolina, in Alabama, in Tennessee, and say, hey, we're not going to be on the road there, but here's my number. Let's connect. And you get their lists and you ID these prospects and stuff like that. And then you grade them and you push them on. There's a ton of recruiting softwares out there. I forget what we used at Valdosta, but where you make your list and you maintain your list and you push them around and everybody gets an eye on them. I think we did a really good job. The good staffs recruit as a staff. So while, I may be in charge of Alabama and talking to Alabama prospects, if we're talking to a wide receiver in Alabama and, some small town in Birmingham or outside of Birmingham, not only am I talking to him, but our receiver coach is hitting him up, our OC's hitting him up, our head coach is talking to him, pending, where they fall on our tier list. But that's the start. You get the lists, you go to camps, you go to schools, and you find these kids and you find these prospects. From there, it depends on when you find them, how quickly you may do, bring them up for a game day visit, certain things like that. You go to schools, you go to their games, you show up, you talk, you invite them to camps and different things like that. I think a big thing too in the recruiting process, I kind of talked about it last week too, as far as building your own roster. But it's just being honest with, from a coaching standpoint, obviously being honest with prospects and with these recruits as to where they stand, because I've done it where, especially at St. Vincent, where a ton of the schools that would come to our camps were our conference schools and our opponents and people we'd see. So if I identified somebody before a camp, 10 chances out of 10, I'm not going to invite him to our camp. And I'm going to tell him, do not come to our camp, because other eyes are going to get on him that, have upper hand on us in recruiting. And I'm not going to put, there's a good chance that they already have him on their radar, but I'm not going to bring him out if I know. If I don't know, I want to see him. And I think there's merit still to seeing people in person, versus just huddle and everything like that. So I was always, if I could get to a practice, if I could get to a game, I want to see a player. If I could get them to a camp, I want to see them. If I know they're going to a camp, I had the pleasure of going to a bunch of different campuses and seeing a bunch of different kids at different camps. And if I could go to another camp, great, I'm going to go and get eyes on the prospects and stuff like that. So I think, identification, evaluation, depending on how your staff sets it up. But, and I don't know if this is really answering your question. Feel free to tell me that I'm not being clear. But so after identification comes evaluation. You watch the highlights, you see the kid, you talk to the coaches that they played for. You send them around to your staff. Typically how it goes is area coach, position coach, coordinator. And if you need a head coach, like, hey, like, this is the guy, we need to put big money on him. And it's different. That's where levels come in too. At Division II, there are no full ride scholarships per se. There are ways to get to full ride scholarships in practice, but not just athletic. So, everybody, and the thing is too, in today's world, all you see is the word offered. Offered don't mean shit in today's college football. It really doesn't. Just because, for the same reason, Division III schools, when I was at St. Vincent, we couldn't give athletic scholarships. There's $0 coming from the athletic department to go to a student's tuition. But I promise you, I offered the hell out of every recruit, because the term offered in college football is sexy right now. and every kid wants an offer, so I'm gonna offer you. And I know we had some internal strife about it, but that's how you recruited. And so, and again, I may be jumping the gun and getting to the offer part, but you get to the evaluation. There's different scales, different methods. I don't know how in depth you want to get with the evaluation, but um, I kind of alluded to it last week too. Um, your traditional, everybody here's the 40, the broad jump, the vert, different things like that. I mean, you look at them, they're measured if we can get eyes on them. If you go to a camp and they're testing, we're going to get those numbers and we're going to plug them in and see. But you also, I mean, ball don't lie, tape don't lie. So, the best thing, as much as seeing kid in person and seeing those test results and stuff like that, I want to see how you play football. And also, more importantly than that, I want to talk to your teachers. I want to talk to your principal. I want to get to know how are you as a student, because at our level, that's huge, both in terms of getting you scholarship dollars academically, because we can't cover your full ride to athletic scholarship wise, but um, and it just goes to the merits of how you're going to be on the football field. I've always believed, um, I didn't necessarily practice, but um, the better you did in classroom setting, the better you're going to do on a football field. Because I know if you take class seriously, you're going to take the meeting room seriously, and you're going to be able to produce football wise, just because it's going to click a little bit better. Um, and that's not to say smart kids make good football players. They do. I think a testament is Carnegie Mellon and what they've been able to do in Division III. I mean, that's a great program. That is a great football program, and I mean, Carnegie Mellon speaks for itself. But sometimes smarter you are, the more confident you are in certain aspects, and that's a whole thing that we can maybe get into at a later date. But so you go from evaluation, and then that's really recruiting. You're communicating with the prospects, and you're going to games, you're having them on campus, and you have recruiting visits and different things like that. And then you get into trying to get commitments. And now we're in the world of with the transfer portal, which is a whole nother recruiting thing, but of early commits and different commitment windows and everything like that. So the thing I said last week is that college programs aren't waiting on high school talent anymore. Like where it used to be high school built your team, it's not the case anymore. So, I'm not like I didn't have to wait on you if I'm recruiting a defensive end from high school and then all of a sudden and like, hey, we got $2,500 a year in scholarship, and that's your athletic scholarship, whatever financial aid you get, whatever academic money you get, that's your package. Um, but you're a big question mark. But I can also get a junior college defensive end that just came out that's got good grades. He's going to get a good academic package, and I can almost get him for free with that $2,500. And I offered you 3 weeks ago as a high school student, your offer's rescinded because I got that JUCO commit, which both obviously hurts high school students and high school recruiting and everything like that, but it's also more of a business than it's ever been. So, I think once you get the commit, the recruiting is kind of done, but it's never done anymore in the world of the transfer portal. And in terms of transfer recruiting, it's very similar. Just you're identifying through the transfer portal, which everybody, it's a clingy term, but there is a database that is the transfer portal. You get an NCAA logon as from your institution, and there is a transfer portal, and you do get into the transfer portal. I think the NCAA does a piss poor job of organizing the transfer portal because you don't know who the kid, like what, you don't know what the position is. You don't know necessarily their eligibility or anything like that. It's just Rob McElhaney, Notre Dame junior, redshirt senior, whatever. And then you got to do the research, which is where having those recruiting departments really helps. I don't know if that answered your question or if there are other questions from that or
Well, there was another question you kind of answered. You kind of answered already, but the one question I had is you kind of already covered, which was like, how do you know like who to recruit or to look at, like the prospects to look at?
Yeah, no, I mean, and again, it depends. There's lists, and as difficult as it is now with the transfer portal for high school students, there's a ton of recruiting services out there, that while some are a huge waste of money, there are a ton out there, and you can put into me, if you do any ounce of research, you can tell the difference between bad recruiting services and really good recruiting services, and also get on the phone with the people. I have somebody that I worked with at one point that works for a recruiting service, and I would trust that man with my life in terms of a just living and b um recruiting. I think he's a guy that's got a ton of relationships. So if you get on the phone with these guys, you can establish some sort of like you can tell the validity of some people. But so they're pushing people, and we depending where you're at in the world, um th- these services, most, right, wrong, or indifferent, most colleges, like if you look up, I think some of my profiles are still out there, and maybe we'll include a picture. Um, and mostly in the profile of each coach, for whatever reason, most emails are public. Like, there's a good bit of Division I schools where emails are public. Um, but if not email, because I know we changed that at Valdosta going to 22s, we didn't want emails public. So we got our Twitter handles put on our profile. So there's different things like that where these services or high school coaches or high school players in general can message coaches and get, whether it's a full list from a service or a coach or just a prospect DMing a coach. Um, as much as times have changed in recruiting, some of it's for the better too, just because the amount of visibility is completely different. As long as the kids are willing to put in the work.
Next question. I'm gonna save the dumb questions for last. Okay.
Okay.
So, how does one become a football coach?
A lot of sleepless and miserable days. No.
Say someone in your position is
Mhm.
someone that like actually didn't have the opportunity that you did, and then went into football.
Well, I think if you aren't involved in college football one way or another as a student, whether that's as a student athlete or as a student assistant like myself, you got no shot, frankly. I could be wrong, and I know there are instances where I am wrong. Case in point, Kenny Dillingham, who's the head coach at Arizona State, one of the best offensive minds. He was a high school, I forget if he was a JV coach or the varsity offensive coordinator, and he just found a way to get around Mike Norvell. He was at Memphis, and now he's the head coach at Arizona State. And the thing with coaching is just as in playing. I mean, there's a ton of similarities. It's just obvious. There's obvious differences, but the biggest thing I can say is get around the right people. If you get around the right people, and you're loyal to them and everything like that, you'll get places, whether that's with them or they give you recommendations or anything like that. But it takes a lot of work. I don't know if there's specific information you're looking for, directions to go with that. I mean, it's tough. I mean, a lot of it too is, you know, if you're a player and you can tell when players get the game a little bit differently mentally and everything like that. Transitions into coaching, and I think coaches can see that fairly easily and quickly. Um, so a lot of times players become grad assistants, and then grad assistants become full time assistants, and then coordinators, and then head coaches, and it's a gradual thing like that. Whereas in a position like me, um, I relied a ton on the coaches that I was around to, teach me, because I think one thing that, and I came in as a really cocky, I came in as a really kind of arrogant, just because I could draw some stuff on whiteboard in high school, thinking I could coach. Um, but I was taught a ton, and just got around some good people. So that's really, I mean, that's how I got into it. It's different for everybody. Obviously, it's football in terms of playing and coaching is not cookie cutter. Um, there's a ton of different ways into it. Um, but that's kind of a basic thing. I don't know if you have any follow up from that, or
No.
it's tough to say one way or another, just because, I mean, first things first, if you don't love ball, you know, and it's a tough life, and I don't know if you have any questions in there about that, but it is a tough lifestyle, which I'm sure is either coming up or you'll come up with something for that. But what do you got next?
Okay, so what does a day look like for a coach during season? And then after you answer that one, during off season.
Okay. Again, it's different. Well, obviously, but even in season is different because camp is different than um in season and in school. Um, but camp we'll start with depends on your schedule. So again in Valdosta we practiced at 8 o'clock in the morning during camp. So my day would start at 4 o'clock, give or take, maybe a little bit earlier, maybe a little bit later, depending on the day. Because I was also, you know, pending the level you're coaching at, you have other responsibilities. So at Valdosta, I was also over equipment, so I had to make sure laundry was done, any equipment issues were fixed, and then our crew, our staff, equipment staff, was ready for practice, and we had stuff going where we needed it to, and everything like that. So that that's been point one, and on top of that, I was our like special teams. I was I put everything together for our special teams coordinator. Um, so I had that stuff to get ready. And I was also defensive line assistant, so I had to get 2 meetings and to make sure we were ready to roll. And stuff like that, and that takes time. So I'd start 4 o'clock, say. Um, First things first, get in and get the coffee on. Um, but that's so you just get your day started. You make sure meeting rooms are set. Any cut ups, any presentations, any installs are ready to go, and then probably about 5:30, players start rolling in. Coaches are coming in between that time as well. We usually start meeting, say like 6 or 6:30 again, and that's pending what your day looks like. You could meet at 7. Hey, all we need is a team meeting, and we're hitting the field. And so you team meet at 7:30, and you go get ready. So it depends, but you go to meetings, then you go to practice. Practice in camp is usually give or take 2.5, 3 hours. Um, Go from there, uh, get cleaned up. Hopefully, you have enough time to grab a quick bite. Or the staffs I worked for did a really good job of making sure like their coaches ate, just because a lot of times it can get forgotten. Um, So our staff made it a point. Hey, we're gonna have lunch. Um, so you get cleaned up, go eat, get back. As a GA, you had to break down film. So that 3 hours of practice, most of it was filmed. You had to break it down, make cut ups, input data. So play calls, if it was a team situation or anything like that, you have to put in down distances and different things like that. Pending what your coordinator and head coach is looking for, maybe you have to do game loss just to get reports run. Play type, different things like that. There's a ton of computer work that goes into it and getting that information. Then you have to run any kind of reports and get stuff ready, because then you went into staff meetings, and so that could take from, like, say, conservatively speaking, you practiced 8 to 11. You had from, say, 11 to 12:30 to get lunch and get film done, or 11 to 12:30 to get lunch. Probably 12:30 to 1:30 was cut ups and data and everything like that. Um, then at 1:30, uh, you meet staff meeting from like 1:30, I'd say, to 3:30. Full staff meeting, 3:30 to 4, give or take. Go to team meetings, position meetings, pending your care hours and pending what you're allowed to do. Go back. You typically have a walkthrough. Usually it's a walkthrough or a meeting, or you split it up and do both with the time you're allotted. Then you go back into another uh, unit. So, defense, we meet again, get practice ready for the next day, and make sure if you need any scout cards, anything like that, you're, you know, my day was pretty much done. Maybe during camp we were a little bit earlier, just because you have the whole day. Um, so 11ish, give or take, we were done for the day during camp. Um, in regular season, after camp was done, it was a little bit smoother of a process. We You'd be done, or I'd still get started around 4 o'clock because we still practiced early. So I get in, same meeting set up, everything like that. The only difference is now you have things like study hall and class checks and whatever the school year throws at you. You're game planning now. So instead of, and practices are shorter. So you're able to go in and get the film done a little bit quicker. We had great film crews, especially at Valdosta, at Slippery Rock. St. Vincent, our film crew was pretty good. Um, and so you're pretty much just getting through the film, making sure you're on track, game plan wise. Different days you had specific things. I don't know if that's something you want to dive into, but whatever your plan is, Monday is just a strict game planning day. Tuesday is practice one, so on and so forth. And you have different situations. Um, and then again, study hall, making sure practice is ready for the following day, and things like that. So there's a lot that goes into it. I don't know if there's any more you wanted. I mean, game days are different, and that's the thing. The thing that I liked, that it oddly transitions into banking really well, is not no one day is the same. So that's where, even the tough thing is, in these situations with what does a typical day look like. If you could tell me what a typical day looks like, I'd appreciate it, because I don't. As much as, and something we've talked about on certain things, about itineraries and having a plan and stuff like that. As much as we had an itinerary, I mean, we had a daily part of our staff meeting was the following day's schedule, both in camp and in the regular season. We knew everything that, like, time wise, but within those situations too, is that it's controlled chaos. Um, so that's, I don't know if you have any offsetting questions from that, but I mean, in season, it's practice, film, game planning, study hall. study hall, and just controlling the chaos.
All right.
Do you have anything on that, or is this where you want me to go to the off season?
We can move to off season, or let me ask you this, and we can go to off season. One of my questions is what does a day look like on game day as a coach?
It depends your level, where you're at. Home games. I mean, I loved I loved being at home for multiple reasons. They're just easier to handle, but and it depended on your your situation, what you did. So typically, pretty much everywhere started with breakfast. And it depended on your kickoff. Obviously, at Slippery Rock, we had two night games a year that were 6 o'clock kickoffs. Usually, they were like within the first 2 or 3 weeks of the year. At Valdosta, other than homecoming, we were 7 o'clock kickoffs. Period. End of story. Which was beyond miserable. But everywhere it started with breakfast, walkthroughs, final meetings, collecting quizzes, different things like that. Which yes, we did. There are quizzes, there are tests. That was part of my job. I made the tests for the defensive line. At Valdosta, I had a quiz every week. At St. Vincent, we had quizzes at New Mexico for 3 weeks. I was there. It just reinforces everything that you're doing, just like in school. So then, again, pending kickoff, like if you had an afternoon kickoff, we probably didn't go home. At Valdosta, we'd eat, we'd meet, and we'd go home and get off your feet for a while. At Slippery Rock, you're eating and then you got to be at the stadium here. So you eat and then pretty much go up to the stadium. I don't think we got bused up to the stadium. I don't think. Valdosta, you'd eat and meet, and that was the nice thing at Valdosta. That it was nice and not nice though, is we had our practice facility and our meeting facility. That was one area, and then we'd bus over to the stadium when it was time. Which again, you'd eat, meet, leave, come back, go to the stadium. St. Vincent, everything's right there, so you're walking everywhere. New Mexico, I never got to a game day, but and again, that's where, do you have any side jobs? I was over equipment, so I was always at the stadium 2 or 3 hours before the team reported, and I was just there. So making sure locker room's good, making sure on field equipment's set up. And then I'd start my game day stuff, which is a whole different beast. But I mean, I don't know if that's a rabbit hole you want to go down. Am I going down my game day?
I say we just stick to my questions, and then when I listen back to this podcast, I can write questions off of what you said today. That's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Because you had an episode off of my game day routine, but kind of just flow through it. Team reports, you're in, and then from that point on, we'd have a schedule on the whiteboard, and the clock starts as soon as you walk in the locker room. So as the special teams guy, I'd have the specialists out. Well, certain position groups did, like the defense, as a defensive line unit, they went out. We did certain hand drills and stuff just to get loose, get warm. And they go back in. By the time they were going in, I'm bringing specialists out, kickers, holders, snappers, punters, receivers, returners. Just kind of getting in the motions, getting loose, getting kicks up in the air, catching kicks, getting some steps in, getting some runs in, stuff like that, just getting going. And then skill positions come out, line comes out for stretch. You have your whole pre-game routine, and then it's kickoff. and go home and, well, no, not go home. As a younger coach, you're breaking down film. And so the 7 o'clock kickoff, I'd be done 2:30, give or take. The nice thing about Slippery Rock was we'd kick off at noon pretty much, and you're done. Game's over 3:30. Films up by 4:30. You're done editing by 6:30. So you have an evening, sorta. Um, but the night kicks were a lot. Um, did that answer? I mean, that's the most scheduled day of the week is game day. Were we going off season now, or
Yeah.
recruiting takes over? It depends on what part of the off season you're in, whether it's spring ball. Spring ball looks eerily similar in ways to your regular season day. The only difference is it's a lot more relaxed. Just because it's all internal. You're not getting ready for a game. You're not scouting a team. You're just, what do we need to do better? Where are we at? And so you're a lot more relaxed. The days start a little bit later and end a little bit earlier. And then, and again, it's too tough to say this is a normal day, but your day starts a little bit later, ends a little bit earlier. But you're recruiting nonstop. There's a ton of fundraising that happens in the off season. And then, spring ball and traveling, and that's, time coaches have a little bit of life to them, and see your family, go on, vacations happen then, and all that fun stuff. You just kind of revamp what you did. There's a lot of playbook research. There's the coaches convention every winter. Something I look for. I love going to the convention. Um, and just, life is a little bit easier then. What you got next?
Okay. Sticking with game days, are travel days stressful as a coach?
It can be. I think it depends on where you're traveling. The nice thing at Valdosta, which is when I was able equipment. Other than that, yes, they're stressful in terms of, I hated being on a bus, and everywhere except for the national championship we bust. Um, but I didn't like being on the bus. But the nice thing about how we got equipment ready was it was a week-long process. So when the game ended Saturday, Sunday, while we were up front doing football, our equipment staff was in the back, and we're getting ready for the next week on Sunday. So we compiled a system and started lists, and they had boards and everything. Just like we did game planning, they had theirs, in the back for equipment, and by if we did it right by Wednesday, we were good to go. Typically, because at Valdosta, we left a lot of times on Thursday, so we were traveling Thursday and Friday, a good bit of the time. But if you're not ready to go by Wednesday morning, you're then it's okay. What's going on? Why not? And then it becomes stressful. But I think if you have a good system around you, no, it's not stressful. But I can say that, but I can't tell you the amount of times I sat down on a bus, and as soon as it pulled away, oh shit, did we grab this? And I'm texting and blowing up the equipment staff that would travel. Hey, did we have this? Did we get this? Did we forget this? And thankfully they were great at what they did. Slippery Rock was a ton of local games, so yes and no. Same with St. Vincent, but they very well could be. The longer trips obviously are more stressful just because there's more moving parts. But aside from, the most stressful thing was just I hated being on the bus. Thank God they invented melatonin drinks. So I forget what the drink was, but it was like this orange juice thing. You drink it, and like I remember going when we played for the PSAC championship. in 2019 at Slippery Rock. I drank one of those and woke up and we were in Reading, and it was great. It was my favorite trip, but they can be stressful. I didn't like traveling, but which from. I like a road trip, but I need a break every hour and a half.
Were there ever kids that showed up late?
Oh yeah, many times.
Was that stressful?
It depended on the kid. Most of the time, and we were fortunate. It didn't happen a ton. And it depended on, the week. If you have the support staff, so like our job as assistants, but position assistants, I'd start a tally as soon as we started having players roll in. And okay, he's here. But shit, where's he at? And you're on the phone. If he's a guy that we're giving a chance to and he's not a normal travel guy and he's not there, screw him. But I think, and obviously, I don't want to say certain players were treated differently, but certain players were treated differently. Welcome to, if you looked at it, it is what it is. That's life. But certain players, if they were missing, yeah, we're gonna stress about it. We're gonna make sure that it gets corrected. But others, I remember there was one time, I forget what game we were going to. I think we were it may have been. It was over a break. I think we were going into a break because we met in a commuter parking lot on campus, and that's where the bus was left from. Maybe we were going to Delta State in Mississippi. But we had a kid show up late, and we eventually stopped. But we were driving out of the parking lot, and he's coming running after the bus, and we drove for a bit, and eventually we stopped. Not eventually, I mean pretty quickly, but we made him panic. But just get to the bus on time. If you're a player or an athlete, just get to the bus. I'm not going to stress about it, but get to the bus.
Okay, I think that those questions are good enough today, right?
You don't have any others?
I do, but I'd rather keep this as like the questions of a coach, like life as a coach questions.
Oh, okay.
And then,
so we don't get any stupid questions today?
Nah.
Okay. Any follow-up, anything? I think that was pretty good. All right. Well, then we will wrap it up for this week. Make sure you follow us on YouTube. Follow us on social medias. Find us on YouTube. Find us wherever you get your podcast. Stay tuned for Reddit, not the Reddit release. We are doing some Reddit stuff in some future episodes, but just follow along. We appreciate your support.
What you were trying to say was the Patreon.
The Patreon. Patreon's coming. Stay tuned. Stay focused. Stay locked in. And we will catch you next time. As always, keep thinking. Thanks for tuning in.